The interesting thing is that a 60-year-old muscle cell has the same strength as a 20-year-old muscle cell on a gram per gram basis. The difference, of course, is that there's a lot. Here in North America, however, it's all about training, and restoration often gets overlooked. Now, there are many different restoration techniques that you can use. For instance, you should not follow very rigid parameters. You need to be somewhat malleable, okay? And what I mean by that is this, because muscle mass is an insurance policy against injury. And one of the best ways to do that is to follow what we call moderate rules. The point I'm trying to make is that the core should not be trained in lieu of the extremities, okay? They're not mutually exclusive. Number one predictor of low back pain is actually depression, okay? So instead of getting a physiotherapist to help treat your back, many people actually require a psychotherapist. That's usually indicative that they do far too much internal rotation and not nearly enough external rotation. You should correct this with your training. You need to include more external rotation exercise. The problem, however, training specificity is important, but being too specific with a high amount of weight can be counterproductive. First of all, in school, we've always been taught to use the RICE method during any injury. Okay, so RICE stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. What do I recommend instead? Almost the complete opposite. And many people claim that by the time they wake up the following morning, they're pain-free. It works really well. But one way to accelerate the penetration of any cream, oil, gel, ointment, anything you use is with the use. Not only should you consume the animal protein, but the specific part of the animal is important, okay? So a steak may be great for a muscle pull, but if you have a joint-related issue, then favor things. Told to me once by a mentor of mine, Dr. Mel Siff, that a valid test to see if an athlete has come back from any type of lower body injury is to have